Thank you, and Kelsey's going to set up really quick. She has a few slides, but I'm sorry, I'm a poor substitute, but still happy to be here. Have great respect for Kathy and the things that her and Burt have done over the years, and Trent and I have been friends since Baltimore, which was a long time ago at this point. When he first spoke there and then had opportunities in Utah, I come from a fourth-generation ranching family here in Utah, run permits, have family that's in the Elko area, actually Carlin area, that has permits, so very familiar with this. To respect for my boss, when he was hiring somebody, I'm about as far from politics as you will ever know. In fact, when I met Trent the first time, I was a rancher and thought politics was crazy, and still not sure that that part isn't true. But my boss was looking for somebody that actually had experience in ranching and natural resources. When he hired me through a Farm Bureau friend, I got connected. I wasn't looking for a job, and there's days I wish I wasn't looking for a job because politics can be crazy. But we are working really hard on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee to shed light on a lot of the issues we talk about. As the Congressman said, if he was here, it's a target-rich environment, and sometimes, you know, it's like shooting carp in a barrel, but we always have things. There's a couple things we've done recently, working on getting rid of the IRS chief, what is his official title, Kelsey, sorry. Commissioner of the IRS. We're holding the EPA accountable for something I heard earlier. They aren't being held accountable for river spills and other things, going after their budget, working tirelessly. And then our biggest thing, and the one that we're going to talk the most about, is returning law enforcement back to the sheriffs and making sure that is in statute and the local sheriffs control the laws enforcement, because that's where we feel as an office it needs to be. We will have a list of the representatives, so you listed 11, and I know you all have friends in other states. We need representatives to keep signing on to this so we can push it. I have a meeting with the Western State Sheriff's Association next week here in Utah. It's something that we're working tirelessly, and it's kind of the biggest issue we came to present on. And Kelsey has put some slides together, so I'm going to turn a few minutes over to her to kind of go through them. And I don't know what I'd do without Kelsey, so she's my right hand in the office, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to her.
So if I'd had more time, I was going to put this to like the Cops theme song, but I didn't know how to do that. So just think in your mind the Cops theme song as we go through this. So we introduced this probably about 3 months ago.
March 16th.
So it's HR 4751. What the bill would do the base of the bill would declare on September 30th, as it says, would terminate the Forest Service Law Enforcement and Investigations Unit and cease using Forest Service employees to perform law enforcement functions on federal lands. And it would also do the same thing for the BLM and end all of their, obviously each agency, the BLM and the Forest Service law enforcement are kind of structured differently, but it would end both of them and the way they go. I guess there's that one right there. So in easy terms, what the bill does is it terminates, like I said, the law enforcement function of the BLM and Forest Service. It would deputize local law enforcement to defend federal land, restore the responsibility for law enforcement to elected officials who are accountable to the local community. And then the money that is being spent currently to do law enforcement for Forest Service and BLM would be given in block grants to each state to be able to disperse out amongst the counties. We're still trying to figure out what formula works best, because we can't do it based solely on acres of public lands, because then Alaska would get all of it. So we're trying to find a perfect balance, not completely like PILT, but something that works when it comes to visitation and the acres and things like that. So the current, yeah. There we go, Trent's got it.
Thanks, Trent. I can count on Trent to come through with me, even if it's at 2 o'clock in the morning picking up pigs, so.
I don't know how to turn this off now. There we go. Okay, so these are our current co-sponsors. If you do not see your representatives up there, we would encourage you to contact them and let them know that this is a good thing, and it's something that they should co-sponsor. We do not yet have a Senate sponsor. That's something that we are working on. But, so anyway, so there's a lot of states that are represented here that does not have someone on this list. So we encourage you to reach out to your folks. and have them co-sponsor. Currently, this is the status of the bill. At the end of March, when we introduced it, it was referred to the Subcommittee on Conservation and Forestry, and we're hoping that things move along, or at least that we can use this as a platform to call in the Forest Service and the BLM and have them answer questions on how much money they currently spend on their inventory when it comes to their law enforcement. There's a lot of questions that nobody seemed to get an answer to. Congressman Chris Stewart from Utah also has another bill dealing with disarming pretty much the law enforcement for some of these agencies, and he's not been successful in getting questions answered. So that's what we're hoping, that if it doesn't move in this Congress at the end of this, with the election and the way that that days in session will go, that at least there'll be a platform that we can build upon for the next year. So as Wade said, this is supported specifically by the Utah Sheriff's Association. Hopefully we can get the Western Sheriff's Association.
We're pretty well there, so we got a couple little things with the Western State Sheriff's Association, which would include almost everybody that was listed here. I'm going to finish answering those questions. They were small details. One, according to the funding that we are trying to nail down perfectly, which, so we should have their associations, and we'd like your state associations to support us as well. We're getting there, but if you can reach out to your folks and your sheriffs in your area, that would be extremely helpful. So, anything else you have?
So this is just current numbers, employees, and money that is currently being spent on the law enforcement for these two agencies. So we're hoping to make the case that, a lot of people use, obviously, that there's not enough, they say there's not enough rangers, right, to cover all the federal land that's out there. And so our case would be to go and say, county sheriff's departments are already currently in the best position to provide the best oversight of these lands, and they know the people. And so anyway, we know we have good local people that work for our county sheriff's departments, and we want to put them in a position to be able to do a better job more effectively. So that's it.
And then thank you. We can take a couple questions, and then I want to add one thing to that really quickly. As we process through this, any help, if you guys think of things, we'll leave some email contacts and that kind of thing. But with the Gerbers, did they leave? I think they had commitments. But as I talk to them, they come up some great stories or actual stories. Ramona, I'm going to get with you wherever you went and sat, that we need for as we go through the evidence, so to speak, and you're an expert on evidence, as I have learned quickly, to push this bill forward. Some great stories that I've just picked up being here. So if we could get contacted with those would be superb, because you guys have documented evidence. Sometimes we get like hearsay stories and they don't help us, but the stuff you're talking about, perfect. Go ahead. Okay, use that microphone. You can.
I had somebody with a hand up over here, Tim Smith. I'll be right there, Angus.
After the Hammond incident, Congressman Walden from our district in Eastern Oregon made a speech on the House floor. Were you aware of that speech?
Yes.
Along with that speech, he inferred, or we felt he inferred, that he was going to move to change the anti-terrorism clause in the Anti-Terrorism Act that Hammonds were sentenced under. Would Representative Chaffetz be willing to work along with him on that? And have you heard if that is in any kind of draft form?
The draft form, I can't tell you for sure, but I know we'd be willing to work on it because it's something we've discussed. Kelsey follows this a little closer.
So on the Oversight Committee, one of the staff members on the Oversight Committee actually helped draft the original law that they were charged under. And so the Oversight Committee has been involved probably for about a year since the case first happened, trying to figure out how do we go through and mix these things. And obviously on the Oversight Committee's side, things go a little bit slower as they do investigations, move it along, but I can imagine that would be something that he would be supportive of.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure as far as the conceptual, I can guarantee you, and we can work with his staff, and I think we have on some other things that I'm aware of, but yes, the short answer. We'll try to make him short, because Wadi, I've heard him a lot of times, and he's a lot better than me, so I don't want to stand up here a long time.
Well, wait, just start speaking in rhyming verse and it'll be better.
I have tried, and after I go to the cowboy poetry gathering in Elko, I always try my hand a couple times, and it's an epic fail.
There's already a provision under FLIPMA Title VII that allows for federal agencies to contract with local law enforcement for enforcement of federal laws. My question and concern is that this proposal not be styled in such a way that our local law enforcement now becomes an employee of the BLM or Forest Service, taking their orders from them.
That's a perfectly good question, and it's one we've talked with the sheriffs. We feel like we've got it right. That's part of what we've talked with the Western States Sheriff Association, because we couldn't agree more. The second thing is the reason that some of you that are in Utah and Nevada get this, especially in Utah, we've had our problems with the contracts. They've about went non-existent in the state of Utah. So that's why we want to get away from the contract form, because it is not working, but we also hear what you're saying, and we are diligently working to make sure that that's exactly what doesn't happen. So, yes, that is a... They're typically the law breakers. So, yeah, so we will... That's a good point, and it's one we're working on, and the sheriffs, the National Sheriff's Association, or the Western States, feels like we're pretty well there, so...
This is Danny Martinez. I've got a question on there. So the Supreme Court in Prince versus U.S., or that's that Richard Mack case where it had to do with the Brady bill, but basically the Supreme Court said that federal laws can't mandate that state officials do anything and vice versa. So if you're going to pass a federal law that mandates some deputization of a state sheriff, it may not pass statutory construction. So my question is if the wording of the bill needs to be looked at before it's submitted to the Senate.
So this wording isn't perfect, and we have worked on that with the sheriffs, the exact thing you're bringing up. We feel like we've gotten there where they're comfortable. The slide, that was like last week, but understand what you're saying, and that's something that we are taking into consideration. So follow and stay updated on the bill, but I understand what you're saying, and it's something we brought up with the sheriffs, and we're working on making sure that we don't cross that line, because it's important to my boss, exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, because what provision under the Constitution is for the federal government to deputize or make any kind of mandatory statute that we would require performance on a state official. See, that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at a constitutional issue and a statutory construction issue.
And that's something that has been addressed and we're working on. And so follow as we do this. I invite you to stay tuned, and we'll try to keep people updated. I will get with Trent and see if we can get on some kind of a list that if you guys want to go to and follow it. But those are some concerns we have heard, and when we get the bill. But where we're at now, from where we started, the sheriffs are feeling pretty comfortable. So I can report that, and we have a lot of sheriff's eyes looking at it for the reason they're the most important piece to this puzzle.
Could you just explain the funding again, please?
So, Kelsey, correct me if I'm wrong. The funding is already there, so we're going to take funding that is already there. Now, getting the formula right is what we are working on the sheriffs, and we're not quite there. But the funding is money that they're already spending on federal law enforcement, turning that, putting it in a block grant to each state, using a 1% type administration fee that the state, and then it will go out to sheriffs. A couple of things we've got to take into account is we have areas in Utah that 10 times the size of their city, and there's areas in Alaska that don't get anybody. They're beautiful, and I wish I was there more often, to be quite frank with you. But giving them the exact same amount of money as we give people that get hit, so we're getting really close. But that's the funding. Does that make sense? So it'll be block grants to the state of money that the federal government is already spending on law enforcement. Nope. So that's why we want to do it in a block grant form, kind of like PILT once it gets there. Unfortunately, we haven't got quite the perfect yet, but we're trying to get as close to perfect as we can.
Question from Grant County, Oregon.
Yes, I'm Elaine Smith. My sheriff is Sheriff Glenn Palmer, and in 2012, he and Sheriff Gilbertson questioned what was the constitutionality for the Forest Service law enforcement to be within our counties. Sheriff Gilbertson wrote a position paper on it. He has since been out of office, but my Sheriff Glenn Palmer is still in office, and he's under tremendous attack by the people that didn't like what he did. But one thing I will say, if I remember right at the time, the answer was that the Forest Service law enforcement had only jurisdiction within the forest over their own employees. And the only other jurisdiction they had was that our sheriff had been signing a cooperative agreement with them that he would police some inside the forest, and in turn they could come on our county roads and police. And the reason he did that, because at the time we had the Forest Service cops coming, like stopping people on county roads and state highways, brandishing weapons and being, pretty ornery about it. And so he actually, at that time, he quit signing this cooperative agreement, which I think it only brought like maybe $15,000 into the county. And to replace that revenue, because he got a lot of flack over that because of the large amount of revenue, he now issues right to carry permits and for out-of-state people as well. So he's more than made up for the $15,000. But he made a statement and insisted that they would no longer come onto the county roads. And for quite a while, you didn't even see Forest Service cops out there. They're kind of gradually encroaching, but he would be a good one to ask. And also, I would look up, and I think you can just, I've Googled it, just look for Sheriff Gilbertson position paper.
Thank you.
Can I say that Elaine and Aaron are neither one good ambassadors for us moving to Oregon? I'm just saying, Wade. Thank you.
It depends on the part of Oregon, unfortunately. But we will follow up with that. But if you could also see if you could follow up with us, that we could make that connection. I even talked to Ms. Morrison Hayes shortly before, and she was mentioning some states, unfortunately, have passed laws that make it a little more complicated. So that's why we want to make it, bring it back and say that, because some state, it gets pretty convoluted as we've looked into each area. So that's why the congressman have felt that it would be good to just clarify, period, this is the law. Yeah. So with that.
We got one more, Wade. You're trying to get out of here. I got one more.
Well, that guy scares me the worst.
My name's Leland Pollack. He wouldn't give me the mic, so he must.
Yeah.
They must know me. But anyway, I'm a Garfield County Commissioner down south, and I was the public land chairman over 29 counties for 2 years. One of the biggest problems we had as counties, and Mr. Gleave there, you know this, is BLM law enforcement. It was a real mess. And we all know what went on down to Bunkersville. Okay, this bill, I call it the silver bullet. That will eliminate all of that mess. As county commissioners, we're paid money to let our sheriffs deputize their own people. This is a good bill. So I totally support this bill. And I've got a little bit of announcement. I got a message today. There's a certain special agent in charge for 2 years. He's gone. Now that ought to have a standing ovation, because he was one of the big problems in a lot of the things that went on in Utah and Nevada. But this bill right here is a lot of, things like that helped. And Jason Chaffetz was a big help, and I appreciate what he did.
Wade, did you want to speak anything quickly to the National Monument before you depart?
Yeah, so really quickly, as some may, if you've been following the news, we've had in our congressional district, unfortunately, the threat of a national monument, which we have been running like crazy on, known as the Bears Ears National Monument, which didn't exist even in thought 2 years ago, and all of a sudden it's the most pristine land in the state of Utah. It became a precious jewel overnight. This comes to where we could use you guys as help in rattling people's chain, and you guys do it well, and I know it gets frustrating, and as I hear your story, I get the frustration. But if we continue pecking away and helping say we don't need those things, it is very helpful, because monuments all of a sudden take 2 million acres and lock them up, and as Commissioner Pollack can state, as he just walked out in Garfield County, it kills economies. They will try to tell you it helps economies, but that's one of the many fronts that we're fighting on a daily basis, and Kelsey's living is made by trying to stop that national monument. So.
That's why I'm still single.
Did you really need to throw that in?
I'm just saying, if I spend all my time on the road.
What is the update? Why hasn't anybody made a really big to-do about the Andalux mine and Billy Clinton's little payoff to the Indonesian contributors?
I didn't hear the question.
Yeah, would you restate that?
Sorry.
Sorry. Bill Clinton made a deal with his Indonesian contributors. This is all very well documented. In trade for that, he basically gave away South Central Utah, Escalante, that whole area. He shuttered that community. Well, people need to know about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's well documented too that Grand Staircase was made twice as big in order to stop the coal. There's a very large coal deposit down there. So
we are working.
Microphone is your friend, Wade. The microphone, not Kelsey, is your friend.
Kelsey's my friend too. So there's stuff that Rob Bishop and Congressman Chaffetz are working on along all those aisles. Congressional staffs are small. There's 12 of us total, so we get immersed, but there's several target-rich environments that we're working on like that, and so.
Final question.
Oh, there's a, South Dakota was the first one, I think, to pass it, but they passed what they call an equal standing bill, which essentially makes it a criminal offense for any federal employee to deprive a citizen of a constitutional right, such as a property right. It makes them criminally liable under state law. And I think South Dakota was the first one that passed that. It was originally proposed in Colorado. So I just want to let these other states know about that. But also talking about the National Monument, there's a provision in the Antiquities Act that requires that the federal government must get a relinquishment from any property owners, even unperfected property claims, is what it says in the act, before the monument can go into effect. The government must get a relinquishment from that person. So what are you going to do to make sure that if there's any unperfected or even perfected property claims within Escalante or any other monument, that the people are made aware of that fact? Because I don't think very many people ever go around reading the Antiquities Act.
We don't have free time like you do, Angus.
It's great reading. You ought to. On Garfield, I can't speak as much. We are working on every angle on the monument that we're afraid we're about to get in our district. The Garfield, or the Grand Staircase, came before me. A lot of problem we have in Utah is these lands don't have hardly any of that there's enough of an outcry. Not that we don't want to take that as a piece. Yeah. So maybe some of that maybe I should follow up with you to make sure we're hitting that. So,
Okay, Kelsey, Burt, Wade Garrett, thank you a million for being here. We appreciate Congressman Chaffetz's continued work.